Hey there, exhausted listener. Welcome back to another episode of historically accurate suffering designed to lull you into unconsciousness. Tonight, we're traveling way back. Not to some castle with drafty windows or a medieval hovel with a leaky roof. No, we're going back about 20,000 years, smack in the middle of the Last Glacial Maximum. That's the fancy science term for the time when everything on Earth was frozen solid and trying to kill you. Think you've had a rough winter? You haven't lived through a season where stepping outside for 2 minutes could literally turn your fingers black and make them fall off. So go ahead, turn off that lamp, pull those blankets up to your chin, and thank every deity you can name that you were born in the age of central heating. Before we dive into this icy nightmare, let me remind you to hit that like button if you enjoy falling asleep to tales of human misery. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another episode of historical discomfort. And hey, drop a comment below telling me where you're listening from and what ungodly hour it is right now. It's always nice to know there's a whole community of insomniacs out there suffering together with me. Now, let's set the scene. It's winter, but not winter like you know it. This isn't, oh no, I forgot my scarf, winter. This is, the ice sheets covering North America are 2 miles thick winter. The world is a different planet. Glaciers stretch from the Arctic down to what will one day be New York City. Europe is a tundra. The oceans are hundreds of feet lower because all that water is locked up in ice. And you? You're a Paleolithic human trying to survive in this frozen hellscape with nothing but animal skins, sharp rocks, and the knowledge that if you mess up even once, you're done. Let's be clear about something right away. You're not living in a cave. That's the first myth we need to destroy. Sure, caves exist. And yes, sometimes your ancestors ducked into them for shelter, or used them for rituals, or painted beautiful art on their walls. But living in a cave full-time, that's mostly Hollywood nonsense. Caves are cold, damp, dark, and usually already occupied by animals that would be thrilled to eat you, like cave bears, cave lions, and cave hyenas. Also, there just aren't that many caves in convenient locations. You can't exactly swing by Zillow and find a nice limestone grotto next to a river full of fish and a meadow full of reindeer. Instead, you're probably living in something your group built. Maybe it's a structure made from mammoth bones covered with hides. Maybe it's a tent made from wooden poles and animal skins. Maybe it's a semi-underground dwelling with walls made of packed earth and a roof of branches and grass. Whatever it is, you helped build it, and it's the only thing standing between you and a frozen death. It's not much, but it's home. And tonight, as the sun sets and the temperature plummets to somewhere around -30 degrees Fahrenheit, you're going to crawl inside and try to sleep. The sun is setting now. You can feel it more than see it. The light draining from the sky isn't just a visual change, it's a physical one. The moment that pale winter sun dips below the horizon, the temperature drops like a stone. The air bites at your face, your hands, any exposed skin. It's the kind of cold that makes your lungs hurt when you breathe in too deeply. Your ancestors didn't have weather apps or thermometers, but they didn't need them. The cold was information. The way the wind cut through your furs, the way your breath froze in the air and fell as tiny ice crystals, the way the ground crunched under your feet, hard as stone. All of that told you exactly how dangerous the night was going to be. You've been out all day. Maybe you were hunting, tracking some animal whose tracks were barely visible in the snow. Maybe you were gathering firewood, breaking frozen branches off dead trees with your bare hands, because gloves haven't been invented yet, and mittens made from fur are too clumsy for detailed work. Maybe you were checking the stores of dried meat and fat that your group prepared during the brief summer months, making sure nothing had been stolen by scavengers. Whatever you were doing, you're exhausted now. Your muscles ache. Your feet hurt from walking miles in crude footwear made from hide wrapped around your feet and tied with sinew. Every part of you is screaming for rest. But rest isn't simple. You can't just flop down anywhere. Sleep in the Ice Age isn't a casual activity. It's a carefully orchestrated survival strategy. If you get it wrong, if you sleep in the wrong place, or without the right preparation, you might not wake up. Hypothermia doesn't care about your dreams. Frostbite doesn't take a night off. So as tired as you are, as desperately as your body craves unconsciousness, you have work to do first. You have to prepare. You have to make sure that when you close your eyes, you'll open them again in the morning. You're walking back to your shelter now. The snow crunches under your feet with every step. That distinctive squeak that only happens when it's really, truly cold. The sound echoes in the stillness. There are no cars, no planes, no electrical hum, just wind, snow, and the occasional howl of something in the distance that might be a wolf, or might be something worse. The landscape around you is almost alien in its emptiness. Rolling hills of white, bare trees like skeletal hands reaching toward the sky, and that enormous, terrible expanse of ice glittering in the last light of day. It's beautiful, in a way that wants to kill you. Your breath comes out in great clouds of vapor. Each exhale is a reminder that you're warm-blooded, that your body is fighting a constant battle against the environment. You need about 3,500 to 4,500 calories a day just to maintain your body temperature and have enough energy to hunt and gather. That's roughly twice what a sedentary modern person needs. And where do those calories come from? Fat. Lots and lots of fat. Animal fat, rendered and stored and eaten in quantities that would horrify your modern descendants with their obsession with low-fat yogurt and kale smoothies. But we'll get to food later. Right now, you just want to sleep. You've reached your shelter. It's not impressive by modern standards. There's no door, just a flap of heavy hide that you have to pull aside to enter. The opening is small on purpose, designed to keep heat in and cold out. You have to crouch to get through, and as you do, you're hit with a wave of air that's warmer than outside, but still far from comfortable. Inside, it's dim. The only light comes from a small fire in the center of the space, banked low to conserve fuel through the night. Smoke hangs in the air, drifting lazily toward a small hole in the roof that serves as a vent. Your eyes water and sting, but that's normal. You're so used to smoke that you barely notice anymore. The interior of your shelter is maybe 15 feet across. Not huge, but big enough for your family group of about 8 to 10 people. The walls are a patchwork of whatever materials were available. Mammoth bones provide structure, their massive curves forming ribs that support the roof. Between the bones, hides are stretched and layered, sometimes 2 or 3 deep, creating a barrier against the wind. In some places, you've packed the gaps with moss, dried grass, even snow when nothing else was available. Snow is actually a decent insulator when it's packed right. It traps air, and air slows heat loss. It's basic physics, though obviously you don't think of it in those terms. You just know that it works. The floor is dirt, frozen solid, covered with layers of dried grass, old hides, and pine boughs. This bedding material isn't just for comfort, it's insulation. Direct contact with the frozen ground would suck the heat right out of your body, leaving you hypothermic, even if the air temperature inside the shelter is tolerable. The grass and hides create a barrier, a buffer zone between your warm flesh and the earth that wants to steal your life. Some of the bedding is pretty old and smells accordingly. There's a faint funk of ancient sweat, smoke, the musk of animals long dead, and dirt. But again, you don't really notice. This is what normal smells like in 18,000 BCE. The fire is the heart of the shelter, literally and figuratively. It's small, carefully managed, fed with pieces of wood and bone that burn slowly through the night. Fire is life in the Ice Age. It provides warmth, obviously, but also light, protection from predators, and a way to cook food. Keeping a fire going all night is a skill. Let it burn too hot, and you waste fuel. Fuel that you spent all day gathering and can't easily replace in winter. Let it burn too low, and it might go out. And starting a fire from scratch in freezing conditions with primitive tools is a nightmare you really don't want to face at 3 in the morning. Someone, probably one of the older members of your group, is responsible for tending the fire through the night. They'll wake up periodically, add a bit more fuel, adjust the airflow, make sure the coals stay hot. It's a crucial job. In some ways, the fire tender is keeping everyone alive while they sleep. And before you drift off, you make a mental note of where the firewood is stacked, just inside the entrance, in case you need to add a log yourself if you wake up shivering in the darkest part of the night. The smoke from the fire is both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, it keeps some of the flying insects away. Yes, even in winter, even in the Ice Age, there are bugs. They hibernate in cracks and crevices, and the warmth of the shelter can sometimes wake them up. Smoke helps keep them groggy and less likely to bite. On the other hand, smoke irritates your lungs, makes your eyes water, and coats everything with a fine layer of soot. The hides on the walls, the bedding, your skin, your hair, everything smells like smoke all the time. You'll smell like a campfire for your entire life, and you'll never know anything different. The ventilation system in your shelter is surprisingly sophisticated. That hole in the roof isn't just random. It's positioned to allow smoke to escape while minimizing heat loss and preventing downdrafts that would fill the shelter with smoke. In some shelters, there are even adjustable flaps made from hide or bone that can be opened or closed depending on wind conditions. This is trial and error engineering, learned over thousands of years. Get the ventilation wrong and everyone suffocates or freezes. Get it right, and you have a livable space that can sustain human life through a winter that would otherwise be lethal. Your family is already inside, settling in for the night. Children are huddled close to the fire, their small bodies wrapped in furs. The elderly are positioned in the warmest spots, nearest the center where the heat is most concentrated. This isn't sentimentality. It's survival logic. Children and old people have a harder time regulating body temperature. They're more vulnerable to the cold. Losing them means losing future hunters and gatherers, or losing the knowledge and experience that keeps everyone alive. So they get the best spots, and everyone else arranges themselves in a rough circle around them, maximizing shared body heat. You start to remove your outer layer of clothing. And yes, you have clothing. Lots of it. Multiple layers, actually, because that's the only way to survive outside in temperatures that regularly drop to -20 or -30 Fahrenheit. Your outermost layer is a heavy cloak made from reindeer hide with the fur still on. Reindeer fur is incredible. Each hair is hollow, filled with air, which makes it an amazing insulator. It's lightweight, warm, and water-resistant. This isn't fashion. This is survival technology. You hunted that reindeer specifically in winter when its coat was thickest, and someone in your group spent hours scraping, curing, and softening the hide to make it wearable. Underneath the cloak, you have more layers. A tunic made from smaller pelts, maybe rabbit or fox, stitched together with sinew using a bone needle. The stitching is tight, the seams overlapping, designed to prevent wind from getting through. You have leg coverings, something like crude pants, also made from hide and fur. Your feet are wrapped in multiple layers of soft hide, stuffed with dried grass for extra insulation, and covered with an outer layer of tougher leather to protect against rocks and ice. It's not comfortable. It's bulky, heavy, and makes you move like you're wearing a spacesuit. But it keeps you alive, so you don't complain. Nobody complains. Complaining is a luxury of warm civilizations. Now comes the actual process of preparing to sleep. You can't just lie down. Well, you can, but you'll regret it. Sleeping in the Ice Age is a team sport. You need other people, their body heat, their presence, their shared warmth. Sleeping alone in these conditions is a death sentence. So you position yourself in your designated spot, which is along the outer edge of the sleeping area, because you're young and healthy, and your body can handle being slightly colder than the kids and elders near the fire. Someday, you'll be old, and you'll get the warm spot, if you're lucky. Your sleeping surface is a pile of furs, layered thick. The bottom layer is made from older, stiffer hides that provide a barrier against the frozen ground. On top of that are softer furs, pelts from animals like fox, wolf, or hare, layered and overlapping to create a mattress that's both insulating and somewhat comfortable. Some of the furs are worn thin from use, patched and repatched. Nothing is wasted. When a hide becomes too damaged to wear as clothing, it becomes bedding. When it's too worn to be bedding, it gets used to stuff gaps in the walls or wrapped around stored food. Every scrap of material has multiple lives. You lie down and immediately feel the cold trying to seep up through the layers. It's always there, that baseline chill, no matter how much insulation you pile on. Your body reacts instinctively, curling into a fetal position to minimize surface area and conserve heat. This isn't a choice, it's biology. Your ancestors have been sleeping in cold environments for hundreds of thousands of years, and your body knows what to do. You tuck your hands under your armpits, pull your knees up to your chest, and reach for the covering furs, the ones you'll pull over yourself like a blanket. These covering furs are the best ones your family has. They're large, thick pelts from animals like bison or mammoth, sewn together to create something like a communal blanket that several people can share. Body heat is shared heat in the Ice Age. You don't sleep under individual blankets because that would be wasteful and less effective. Instead, you huddle together, 2 or 3 people under a single massive fur, and the warmth you generate collectively stays trapped in that shared space. It's intimate, sure, but modesty is another luxury of warm civilizations. Right now, warmth is survival, and survival beats embarrassment every time. Someone, usually one of the women in the group, has placed heated stones near the sleeping areas. These stones were sitting near the fire for hours, absorbing heat, and now they're wrapped in scraps of hide and positioned strategically under the furs. They'll radiate warmth for a few hours, just enough to take the edge off the cold as you fall asleep. It's a small comfort, but in the Ice Age, small comforts are everything. You'll wake up later when the stones are cold again, and the chill will creep back in, but by then you'll be deeply asleep, and your body's metabolism will have adjusted. Probably. The smell under the furs is intense. It's a combination of smoke, animal musk, human sweat, and dirt. The hides are never washed because water is precious and soap doesn't exist yet. They're occasionally scraped to remove loose dirt and dried blood, but that's about it. You're also not particularly clean. Bathing in winter is dangerous. Getting wet can lead to hypothermia if you don't dry off fast enough, and drying off is hard when there's no such thing as a towel and the air temperature is below freezing. So you're dirty, the furs are dirty, everyone is dirty, and everything smells accordingly. But again, this is normal. This is what human beings smell like when they're not dying of cold. You'll take smelly over dead any day. Your body is already starting to relax, the day's exhaustion pulling you towards sleep. But your mind is still active, running through a mental checklist. Is the fire still going? Yes, you can see the faint orange glow and hear the occasional crack of burning wood. Is everyone accounted for? You do a quick count of the lumps under the furs. Yes, all present. Is the entrance flap secure? Someone checked it already, but you glance over anyway. It's pulled tight, weighted down with a rock to keep it from blowing open in the night. Check, check, check. Everything is as safe as it can be in a world that's constantly trying to kill you. Outside, the wind picks up, howling around the shelter with a sound that's almost alive. It finds every tiny gap in the walls and whistles through, a high-pitched keening that's unnerving if you think about it too long. So you don't think about it. You focus on the warmth of the person next to you, the weight of the furs, the sound of breathing all around you. These are your people, your family, your group, your tribe. You've spent every day of your life with them, and you'll spend every night of your life sleeping next to them. There's comfort in that, in the familiarity, in the shared experience of surviving together. Your breathing is slowing now, deepening. Your body temperature is stabilizing, the initial shock of lying down on a cold surface fading as the furs and shared body heat create a microclimate around you. You're not warm, exactly, but you're not actively freezing either, which is about the best you can hope for. Sleep is creeping in at the edges of your consciousness, pulling you down into that strange, vulnerable state where you're not quite aware of the world around you. It's dangerous, in a way, to be unconscious in an environment this hostile. But your body needs rest to repair itself, to prepare for tomorrow's challenges. So you let go, little by little, trusting the fire, the furs, and the people around you to keep you alive through the night. As you drift off, your last conscious thought is a simple one. You're cold, you're tired, you're dirty, and you smell like a bonfire. But you're alive. And in 18,000 BCE, alive is winning. Okay, so you're asleep now. Sort of. Let's talk about what's actually happening to your body while you're unconscious in sub-zero temperatures, because it's pretty fascinating and also horrifying. Your metabolism during sleep is different from a modern human's. For one thing, it doesn't slow down as much. Normally, when you sleep, your body conserves energy by lowering your core temperature slightly and reducing your metabolic rate. That's great when you're in a temperature-controlled bedroom with a memory foam mattress. It's less great when the ambient temperature is trying to turn you into a popsicle. Your Ice Age body has adapted over thousands of generations to handle this problem. Your basal metabolic rate, the energy your body burns just to keep functioning, is higher than it would be in a warm environment. Even while sleeping, your muscles are engaged in low-level shivering thermogenesis, tiny, constant contractions that generate heat without fully waking you up. It's exhausting in the long run, which is why you need so many calories, but it's what keeps your core temperature in the safe zone through a long winter night. You're essentially running a furnace inside your body 24/7, and sleep is just the period when you're not also trying to hunt mammoth or gather firewood on top of that. Your blood circulation during sleep is also strategically managed by your autonomic nervous system. Blood flow to your extremities, your fingers and toes, is reduced to minimize heat loss. Your body prioritizes your core, your vital organs, your brain. If your fingers get a little frostbitten, that's unfortunate, but survivable. If your heart stops because it got too cold, you're dead. So your body makes cold, ruthless calculations about where to send blood and where to let things get dangerously cold. It's not pleasant. You might wake up with numb toes or fingers that sting and throb when circulation returns. But you wake up, and that's what matters. Your skin temperature is significantly lower than your core temperature right now. The surface of your body, the parts exposed to the cold air inside the shelter, has dropped to conserve heat for your internal organs. Your face, if it's not buried under the furs, is cold to the touch. Your nose, sticking out into the open air, is probably barely above freezing. This sounds awful, and it kind of is, but it's also an adaptation. By allowing your skin to get cold, your body reduces the temperature gradient between you and the environment, which slows heat loss. It's like turning down the heat in rooms you're not using to save on the energy bill, except the rooms are parts of your body and the energy bill is calories. Let's talk about fat for a moment, because fat is your best friend in the Ice Age. You're probably carrying about 15 to 20% body fat if you're an adult in good health, Maybe more if you're a woman, or if it's been a good season for hunting. That fat isn't just stored energy, it's also insulation. A layer of subcutaneous fat all over your body acts as a buffer against the cold, trapping heat and slowing its transfer to the outside world. Modern people in wealthy countries often view body fat as something to be minimized for aesthetic reasons. Your Ice Age ancestors would think that's insane. Fat is life. Fat is warmth. Fat is the difference between surviving winter and becoming a cautionary tale. The fat you eat is even more important. Your diet is probably 50 to 60% fat by calories, maybe even higher in winter when plant foods are scarce and meat is all you have. You eat the fatty parts of animals preferentially, the organs, the marrow, the blubber if you're near the coast and can hunt seals. Lean meat alone won't cut it. There's even a condition called rabbit starvation that happens when you eat only lean protein without enough fat. You can eat until you're full and still starve because your body can't process protein efficiently without fat to go with it. So you eat fat, lots of it. Rendered fat, raw fat, cooked fat, fat stored in containers made from animal stomachs and intestines. It's not the modern Western diet. It's the diet that keeps you alive when the world is ice. Your sleep cycles are probably different from a modern human's too. Studies of contemporary hunter-gatherer groups living in cold environments suggest that pre-industrial humans didn't sleep in one solid 8-hour block. Instead, sleep was segmented, with periods of waking in the middle of the night. You might sleep for 3 or 4 hours, wake up for an hour or two, then sleep again until dawn. During those wakeful periods, you might tend the fire, check on children, stare into the darkness and listen for threats. It sounds exhausting, but your body and brain are adapted to it. You get the deep restorative sleep you need, just in a different pattern than your descendants will find normal. Interestingly, your sleep-wake cycle is closely tied to temperature, not just light. Research shows that pre-industrial people typically fell asleep during the nightly period of declining ambient temperature and woke when temperatures started to rise, even slightly. In winter, with its long nights, this means you're probably sleeping longer than you would in summer. Maybe 9 or 10 hours in the depths of winter versus 6 or 7 in summer. Your body is chemically primed for this. Melatonin, the hormone that regulates sleep, is produced in response to darkness. And with 16 or 17 hours of darkness in winter, you're getting a lot of it. It's not laziness, it's biology responding to the environment. There's also the question of whether early humans might have actually hibernated or something close to it. This is a controversial idea, but some researchers have suggested that bone evidence from Ice Age humans shows signs of metabolic changes similar to those seen in hibernating animals. Lesions on bones that could indicate vitamin D deficiency, slowed bone growth, and other markers that might result from extended periods of very low activity and reduced metabolism. The theory is that during the worst parts of winter, when food was scarce and going outside was deadly, humans might have entered a semi-hibernation state, sleeping for extended periods to conserve energy. It's not proven, and many scientists are skeptical, but it's a fascinating idea. Imagine sleeping through January, only waking to eat a little stored fat and tend the fire before going back under the furs. Whether or not your ancestors hibernated, they definitely slept a lot in winter. There wasn't much else to do. With darkness falling in mid-afternoon and not lifting until late morning, and with temperatures that made extended outdoor activity dangerous, sleep became a primary activity. Not just at night, but during the day too. Naps, dozing, long periods of rest huddled under furs while storms raged outside. It wasn't the productive hustle culture nightmare of modern life. It was survival. Your body needed rest to maintain the intense metabolic activity required to stay warm, and winter provided the perfect excuse to sleep as much as humanly possible. So, you did. And right now, in your shelter in 18,000 BCE, that's exactly what you're doing. Sleeping, shivering slightly, dreaming whatever dreams come to people who live in the Ice Age, and staying alive one cold, uncomfortable night at a time. Around midnight, you wake up. Not fully, not in the startled, panicked way you'd wake if there was danger. This is a soft waking, a gentle surfacing from sleep into a state of quiet consciousness. Your eyes open in the darkness of the shelter. The fire has burned down to glowing coals, casting barely enough light to see the shapes of people around you, mounds under furs, the rise and fall of breathing. This midnight waking is normal, expected, part of the natural rhythm of human sleep that your descendants will mostly forget when they invent electric lights and alarm clocks. For now, though, it's just another part of the night. You lie still for a moment, taking inventory. Are you cold? Yes, but tolerably so. The heated stones have gone cold hours ago, but the shared body heat under the furs is holding. Your toes are numb, your fingers tingling, but nothing feels dangerous yet. Nothing feels like frostbite setting in. You wiggle your toes experimentally inside their wrappings of hide and grass, and sensation returns, pins and needles that are uncomfortable but reassuring. Pain means the tissue is alive. Pain means you're okay. You do the same with your fingers, flexing them, feeling the stiffness in the joints. Everything works. You're still functional. The fire needs attention. You can tell just by looking at it. The coals are still red, but they're fading, and if they go out completely, restarting the fire will be a massive pain. You'd need to use a fire drill, spinning a wooden stick in a notch until friction creates enough heat to ignite tinder. And that takes time and energy and creates smoke and noise that will wake everyone else up. Much better to just add some fuel now and keep the coals alive. You carefully extract yourself from under the furs, moving slowly to avoid waking the person next to you. The cold air hits your face and hands like a physical slap. It's shockingly, aggressively cold. Your breath comes out in great clouds, visible even in the dim light from the coals. You crawl toward the fire, staying low because heat rises, and the warmest air is always near the ground. The dirt floor is hard under your knees, cold even through your layers of clothing. Near the entrance, where the firewood is stacked, you select a few pieces. Not too big, because you don't want the fire to blaze up and burn through all your fuel before dawn. Not too small, because they'll burn too fast, and you'll be back here in an hour doing this again. Medium-sized pieces, about as thick as your wrist, dry wood that will burn slowly and steadily. You also grab a couple pieces of bone. Mammoth bone, to be specific, thick chunks of femur or rib that burn with a slow, intense heat. Bone is precious fuel. but it lasts longer than wood, and on the coldest nights, it's worth it. You carefully place the wood and bone on the coals, positioning them to allow airflow but also to maximize contact with the hot embers. For a moment, nothing happens. Then, a small flame licks up from beneath the new fuel, catching on a splinter of wood. It grows, spreads, and within a minute, the fire is crackling softly, throwing more light around the shelter. The warmth is immediate and glorious. You hold your hands over the flames, feeling the heat sink into your cold fingers, bringing them back to life with that uncomfortable, prickly sensation. You stay there for a few minutes, soaking up the warmth, watching the fire dance. It's peaceful, in a way. The world outside is frozen and hostile, but in here, in this moment, with the fire between you and the darkness, you feel almost safe. While you're awake, you might as well check on things. You glance around the shelter, doing a mental head count. Everyone's here, lumps under furs, breathing sounds filling the space. The children are piled together near the center, 3 or 4 of them in one furry mass, generating and sharing heat like a litter of puppies. The old woman who tends to wake up coughing in the night is quiet for now, sleeping peacefully. That's good. When she coughs, it wakes everyone, and nobody's happy about it. The entrance flap is still secure, weighted down against the wind that you can hear howling outside. Everything is as it should be. Everything is under control, at least as much as anything can be controlled in 18,000 BCE. You think about your dreams. That's another thing that happens during these midnight wakings. Dreams are vivid after the first sleep, more vivid than the ones you'll have before dawn. You remember pieces of the one you were just having. Something about hunting, tracking an animal through deep snow, the frustration of losing the trail. Then something else, harder to grasp, a feeling more than a scene. Anxiety, maybe, or anticipation. Dreams are important to your people. They're messages, warnings, glimpses of things that might happen. People talk about their dreams in the morning, trying to interpret them, looking for patterns and meanings. You'll remember this one and share it tomorrow. See what the elders think it means. There's a sound outside. You freeze, listening. It's distant, but distinct. A howl, long and eerie, rising and falling. Wolf. Maybe wolves. Plural. It's hard to tell. They're far enough away that they're not an immediate threat, but close enough that you're aware of them. Wolves are dangerous, especially in winter when prey is scarce and they're desperate. A pack of dire wolves, bigger and meaner than the gray wolves your descendants will know, can take down prey much larger than themselves. They could definitely take down a human, especially a lone human, especially at night. But you're not alone, and you're in a shelter, and you have fire. And wolves are smart enough to know that humans with fire are more trouble than they're worth. Usually, mostly. The howl comes again, and then silence. You exhale slowly, unaware that you'd been holding your breath. The darkness outside is absolute. There's no moon tonight, or if there is, it's hidden behind clouds. No streetlights, no distant glow of a city on the horizon, nothing. Just darkness so complete it feels solid, like a physical presence pressing against the shelter. Inside, the firelight creates a small bubble of visibility, a sphere of orange-gold warmth that ends at the walls. Beyond that, the night is everything. It's easy to understand why your ancestors believed in spirits and demons that lived in the darkness, why night was a time of danger and superstition. When you can't see what's out there, your imagination fills in the blanks, and imagination in the Ice Age tends toward the terrifying. You're getting cold again, sitting here away from the furs and the shared body heat. The fire is nice, but it only warms one side of you. Your front is toasty, but your back is freezing. You need to go back to bed, back under the pile of furs where you can warm up and maybe sleep another few hours before dawn. You take one last look around, making sure everything is still secure, still safe. The fire is burning well now, enough to last until someone else wakes up and adds more fuel. Your job is done. You crawl back to your sleeping spot, moving carefully to avoid stepping on anyone in the darkness. You slip back under the furs, and the residual warmth trapped there is like a blessing. The person next to you, your partner, mumbles something in their sleep and shifts closer, seeking your body heat. You settle in, pulling the furs up to your chin, tucking yourself into a tight ball to conserve warmth. Your eyes close. Sleep is already pulling at you again, dragging you back down into unconsciousness. The last thing you're aware of is the sound of breathing all around you, the crackle of the fire, and the wind outside. Then, nothing. Let's talk about what's outside in the darkness, because it's important to understand just how dangerous nights were in the Ice Age. You are not at the top of the food chain. That's a weird concept for modern humans to grasp, because you've spent your whole life in a world where humans are apex predators, where we hunt everything and nothing hunts us. But in 18,000 BCE, that's not true. You are prey. You are meat. And there are lots of things out there in the darkness that would love to eat you. Start with the obvious ones. The big cats. Saber-toothed cats, species like Smilodon in the Americas or Homo in Eurasia, are still around in some places during your time, though they're getting rare. These aren't the elegant, graceful cats you see in zoos. These are killing machines, built for ambush hunting, with massive canine teeth that can punch through hide and bone. They're not fast runners. They don't need to be. They're patient, silent, and when they strike, it's over in seconds. A bite to the neck or throat, those massive fangs severing arteries and crushing windpipes, and their prey, which could absolutely be you, goes down hard. Saber-toothed cats probably don't hunt humans often, because humans are tricky prey, with weapons and fire and the tendency to travel in groups. But if a cat is hungry enough, or if it comes across a lone human at the wrong moment, it won't hesitate. Then there are cave lions, Panthera spelaea, bigger than modern lions, and unlike modern lions, probably solitary hunters. They roam the open grasslands and woodlands of Ice Age Europe and Asia, and they are absolutely capable of taking down a human. They hunt megafauna, prey as large as young mammoths or bison, so a human is well within their capability. Cave lions don't live in caves, despite the name. They're called that because their bones are often found in caves, places where they denned or where their kills were dragged by scavengers. But They're out there in the landscape, prowling, hunting, and occasionally competing with humans for shelter. If your group tries to move into a cave that's already occupied by a cave lion, you're going to have a problem. Cave hyenas are another nightmare. These aren't the scrappy scavengers you might be thinking of. Cave hyenas are huge, robust, with bone-crushing jaws that can pulverize femurs to get at the marrow inside. There's archaeological evidence of them eating humans, hominin bones with distinctive hyena tooth marks, skulls crushed by repeated bites. Hyenas hunt in packs, and they're smart, organized, and aggressive. They'll test a human group, circling, looking for weakness. If your group is small, or tired, or poorly armed, a hyena pack might decide you're worth the risk. And in winter, when food is scarce and hyenas are desperate, they're more likely to take chances. They also compete with humans for cave space, especially in winter when shelter is crucial. There's evidence that populations of cave hyenas may have actually delayed human migration into some regions, including North America, because they were so common and so dangerous. Wolves, as mentioned, are a constant threat. Not the wolves you know, but dire wolves, larger, heavier, more muscular. They hunt in organized packs, using coordinated strategies to bring down large prey. A full-grown human isn't too large for a wolf pack, especially if that human is alone or injured or otherwise vulnerable. Wolves communicate with howls and body language, working together with an efficiency that's both beautiful and terrifying. When a wolf pack decides to hunt, they're relentless. They'll chase prey for miles, taking turns leading the pursuit, wearing down their target until it's too exhausted to fight back. Fire keeps them at bay, usually, and a group of humans with spears and stones can fight them off if necessary. But wolves are opportunists. If they see a chance, they'll take it. And it's not just mammalian predators. There are birds, giant birds, eagles and vultures with wingspans that dwarf anything you've seen, capable of swooping down and grabbing small prey, including human children. There's evidence of early humans being attacked from above, killed by birds of prey that saw them as food. It sounds absurd, like something from a fantasy novel, but it's real. If you're a small child wandering away from the group, if you're not paying attention, a bird might see an opportunity. It's another reason why children in Ice Age societies never stray far from adults, why there's always someone watching, always someone keeping an eye on the sky, as well as the ground. Even the herbivores are dangerous. Woolly rhinos, massive and bad-tempered, will charge if they feel threatened. They're not trying to eat you, but getting trampled or gored by a rhino is just as fatal as being eaten by a lion. Mammoths, usually gentle and less provoked, can be deadly if you startle them or if a mother decides you're too close to her calf. Bison, with their sharp horns and surprising speed, are another risk. The Ice Age landscape is full of large, powerful animals, and many of them can kill you even if they don't want to eat you. It's a world where you have to be constantly alert, constantly aware, because threats can come from any direction at any time. This is why fire is so important. Fire is protection. Most predators are afraid of fire, or at least wary of it. The light, the heat, the smoke, the crackling sounds, all of it signals danger to an animal's brain. Fire means humans, and humans mean weapons and coordination and the possibility of getting hurt. So predators avoid fire. They'll circle around it, watching from the darkness, but they won't come into the light. As long as you keep the fire burning, as long as you stay in its protective circle, you're relatively safe. That's why letting the fire go out is unthinkable. Without fire, you're just another vulnerable piece of meat in a landscape full of things that want to eat you. This is also why humans sleep in groups. There's safety in numbers. A lone human is easy prey. A group of humans, armed with spears and rocks and fire working together, is a formidable opponent. Predators do a risk-reward calculation. Is the potential meal worth the potential injury? Usually, the answer is no. A pack of hyenas might think twice about attacking 8 humans with pointy sticks and fire. They'll look for easier targets, prey that can't fight back as effectively. But a lone human, or a small group of 2 or 3, that changes the math. That makes humans look more like prey and less like predators. So you stay together. You sleep together. You huddle under the same furs and breathe the same smoke-filled air and endure each other's snoring and smell. Because the alternative is being alone in the darkness with the wolves and lions and hyenas. The sounds of the night are a constant reminder of these dangers. Howls, roars, the crack of branches, the scuffle of movement in the snow. Every sound is information, a data point your brain processes unconsciously. How far away? Moving closer or farther? Multiple animals or just one? Predator or prey? Your ancestors developed acute hearing because survival depended on it. The ability to hear a twig snap in the darkness and know what made that sound, that's the difference between life and death. And even in sleep, part of your brain is always listening, always monitoring, ready to jolt you awake if something sounds wrong. It's exhausting, in a way, to never fully relax, to never feel truly safe. But it's necessary. It's how you survive. Right now, in your shelter with the fire burning and your family around you, you're as safe as you can be. The walls of hide and bone are a barrier. The fire is a weapon. The group is a deterrent. But you're never completely safe. There's always the possibility that something could get through, that a predator could be desperate or bold enough to try. It's a low probability event, but not a zero probability event. And in the Ice Age, low probability catastrophic events are something you think about a lot. So you sleep, but lightly. You rest, but alertly. And you wake up in the morning grateful every single time that you survived another night. Dawn is still hours away. You've fallen back asleep after tending the fire, and now you're dreaming again. This time, it's about food, which makes sense because you're hungry. You're always hungry. Hunger is the baseline state of existence in the Ice Age, especially in winter. Your body is burning calories at a ferocious rate just to stay warm, and replacing those calories is a constant challenge. You dream about meat, fatty meat, the kind that melts on your tongue and fills your belly with warmth. You dream about the taste of roasted mammoth fat, the rich, oily texture of bone marrow sucked from a cracked femur. You dream about food because food is survival, and survival is always on your mind. Let's talk numbers because they're kind of horrifying. A modern sedentary adult needs about 2,000 to 2,500 calories a day to maintain their weight and energy levels. You, an Ice Age human living in sub-zero temperatures and engaging in intense physical activity daily, need about 3,500 to 4,500 calories a day. Maybe more on particularly cold days or when you're doing heavy labor. That's almost double. And where do those calories come from? Meat and fat. Lots and lots of meat and fat. Your diet is probably 50 to 70% fat by calories because fat is energy dense. 1 gram of fat has 9 calories compared to 4 calories per gram for protein or carbohydrates. Fat is the most efficient fuel source available to you. You eat every part of the animal you hunt. Nothing is wasted. The muscle meat, obviously, but also the organs, the brain, the tongue, the marrow from inside the bones, the fat deposits under the skin and around the organs. The organ meats are particularly valuable because they're rich in vitamins and minerals you can't get from muscle meat alone. Liver, for instance, is packed with vitamin A, vitamin D, iron, and other nutrients. You eat it raw sometimes, when it's fresh from a kill, because cooking destroys some of the vitamins. It's not about taste or preference. It's about nutrition. It's about getting what your body needs to survive. The fat is the prize. When you kill a large animal, a mammoth or a bison or a reindeer, the first thing you do after the initial butchering is locate and harvest the fat. In mammoths, there are thick layers of subcutaneous fat, sometimes several inches thick, insulating their massive bodies against the cold. Some mammoths even have fat deposits on their necks, like humps. A single mammoth, medium-sized, might have hundreds of pounds of usable fat. That fat is scraped off the hide, cut into chunks, and either eaten immediately or rendered down for storage. Rendered fat, melted and strained to remove impurities, can be stored in containers made from animal stomachs or intestines. It keeps for months, especially in cold weather, and provides concentrated energy when you need it. You eat fat in quantities that would horrify a modern nutritionist. Chunks of it, raw or lightly cooked, added to everything. Mixed with dried meat and berries to make pemmican, a high-calorie travel food that can sustain you for days. Spread on pieces of roasted meat like butter. Eaten straight in emergencies when you need calories fast and nothing else is available. Your body is adapted to this high-fat diet. Your metabolism runs on fat, burning it efficiently to produce heat and energy. Carbohydrates are rare in your diet, especially in winter when plants are dead and buried under snow. Occasional tubers dug from frozen ground, some stored nuts and seeds, dried berries if you were lucky enough to gather them in summer. But mostly, it's meat and fat. That's the Ice Age macronutrient breakdown. High fat, moderate protein, very low carbs. There's a real risk of something called protein poisoning, or rabbit starvation, if you eat too much lean meat without enough fat. Your liver can only process a certain amount of protein, and if you exceed that limit without balancing it with fat and carbs, you get sick. Symptoms include diarrhea, nausea, weakness, and eventually death if you don't correct the imbalance. It's called rabbit starvation because it often happened to people who were surviving on lean game like rabbits, which have almost no body fat, especially in winter. You need fat to process protein efficiently. You need fat to survive. So when you hunt, you're not looking for the leanest meat. You're looking for the fattiest, the richest, the most calorie-dense prey you can find. Mammoths are the jackpot. One medium-sized mammoth can feed a group of 50 people for about 3 months, if the meat and fat are properly stored and rationed. That's not even accounting for all the other uses. The bones for tools and shelter construction, the hide for clothing and containers, the sinews for thread, the ivory tusks for carving and trade. A mammoth is a walking resource depot, and successfully hunting one is a massive boost to your group's survival chances. But mammoths are dangerous to hunt, and they're getting rarer as the Ice Age wears on. So you also hunt smaller game: reindeer, horses, bison, whatever you can find. Each animal provides some meat, some fat, some materials. You take what the land gives you and make it work. Storing food is a challenge. In winter, at least, the cold works in your favor. Meat and fat frozen solid will keep for weeks or months. Some groups dig pits in the permafrost, creating natural freezers where carcasses can be stored. Others use ice caves, vertical shafts in glaciers where meat can be hung, safe from most scavengers. The meat might get freezer burn, might develop off flavors, but it's still edible, still calories. And in the Ice Age, you can't afford to be picky. Some meat is dried, cut into thin strips and hung near the fire to smoke and dehydrate. Dried meat is lighter, easier to carry, and lasts even longer than frozen meat. It's tough, chewy, not particularly pleasant to eat, but it's portable calories, and that's what matters. You also eat things your descendants would find horrifying. The partially digested stomach contents of herbivores, for instance, called digesta. When you kill a reindeer, you open its stomach, and there's a mass of chewed grass, partially broken down by the animal's digestive system. That digesta contains carbohydrates, vitamins, enzymes, nutrients that are otherwise hard to get in winter. Some groups eat it. Not as a delicacy, not for fun, but because it's nutritious, and nothing can be wasted. Every calorie counts. Every source of nutrition, no matter how unappetizing, is considered. Survival isn't about enjoying your meals. It's about getting enough energy to make it to the next meal. In your dream, you're eating. You're tearing into a piece of fatty meat, the grease running down your chin, the taste rich and satisfying. Your stomach is full, gloriously, uncomfortably full. A rare and wonderful feeling. You're warm, fed, safe. It's a good dream, one of the best kinds of dreams you can have in 18,000 BCE. And then something shifts, the dream logic changing. And suddenly, you're cold again, hungry again, searching for food that isn't there. That's when you start to wake up, pulled from sleep by your body's need for calories, by the gnawing emptiness in your belly that's present even after a meal, because you can never quite eat enough to silence it for long. But it's not dawn yet. It's still dark. So you close your eyes and try to sink back into that good dream, the one where you're warm and full and everything is okay, at least for a little while. You're awake again. This time it's not the cold or the hunger or the need to tend the fire. It's your bladder. You need to pee, and that means dealing with one of the least pleasant aspects of Ice Age life: sanitation. Or rather, the complete lack of it. Because let's be honest, bathroom facilities in 18,000 BCE are not what you'd call sophisticated. They're not even what you'd call basic. They're essentially go outside and find a spot. And going outside in the middle of a winter night when it's negative 30 degrees is about as appealing as it sounds. You lie there for a minute, hoping the urge will pass, knowing it won't. Your bladder is insistent, and ignoring it will just make things worse. So you steel yourself, preparing mentally for what's about to happen. You carefully extract yourself from under the furs, trying not to disturb the person next to you. The cold air hits you like a punch to the face. It's brutal, shocking, the kind of cold that makes your eyes water instantly. You pull your outer furs around you, wrapping yourself as tightly as possible, and make your way toward the entrance of the shelter. The entrance flap is stiff, partially frozen, and you have to tug hard to move it aside. A blast of wind and snow hits you as you step outside, and for a moment you seriously reconsider this whole biological necessity thing. But your bladder doesn't care about the weather, so you push forward, moving away from the shelter entrance. You don't go far, just far enough that you're not contaminating the immediate living area. There's a designated spot, sort of, a place where everyone goes. It's not marked, not organized, just a general area downwind from the shelter where waste accumulates and freezes and gets covered by snow. Squatting in the darkness in sub-zero temperatures while trying to keep your clothing out of the way is an exercise in misery. Your exposed skin goes numb almost immediately. The wind is howling, blowing snow into your face, and you're trying to balance and not fall over because falling in this situation would be the absolute worst. You finish as quickly as possible, using a handful of snow to clean yourself, which is its own special kind of torture. Snow is cold. Very cold. But it's what you have. There's no toilet paper, obviously, no leaves in winter, no soft moss. Just snow and your own grimacing tolerance for discomfort. You scramble back to the shelter as fast as you can, nearly falling in your haste to get out of the wind. Back inside, the relative warmth feels like a miracle, even though the shelter is still cold enough that you can see your breath. You shake off the snow that's accumulated on your furs and hair, then make your way back to your sleeping spot. Getting back under the furs is heaven, even though you're now freezing and it'll take a while for your body heat to build back up. The person next to you, half awake, grumbles something unintelligible and shifts away from your icy presence. Then, realizing you're just cold and not a threat, shifts back and shares their warmth. This is life. This is normal. This is what passing water looks like in the Ice Age. Let's talk about the bigger picture of hygiene, because it's fascinating and horrible. You don't bathe in winter. You can't. Water is frozen, and melting enough snow to create bath water would require a massive amount of fuel that you can't spare. Even if you could, getting wet in this temperature is dangerous. If you don't dry off completely and quickly, hypothermia sets in. So you're dirty. You've been dirty for weeks, maybe months. Your hair is matted with grease and smoke and dirt. Your skin has a layer of grime that you've stopped noticing. Under your furs and hides, your body is covered in a combination of dead skin cells, sweat, and the natural oils your skin produces. But here's the thing. That layer of grime isn't entirely bad. It actually serves a purpose. The oils and grime on your skin create a barrier, a layer of insulation that helps retain heat and protects your skin from the harsh wind and cold. Some groups even intentionally coat their skin with animal fat or grease, rubbing it on like a moisturizer, because it seals in warmth and prevents chapping and frostbite. It looks disgusting by modern standards, but it works. Your ancestors aren't filthy because they're lazy or ignorant. They're filthy because it's strategic. Clean skin loses heat faster. Greasy skin, covered in layers of protective filth, survives. Your clothing never gets washed either. The hides and furs you wear are cured and softened when they're first made, but after that, they're worn until they fall apart. They absorb your sweat, the smoke from the fire, the grease from your meals, the blood from hunting. They develop a smell that's uniquely yours, a personal funk that marks you as an individual. Everyone smells different, but everyone smells strong. It's not pleasant, not by modern standards, but it's normal. You don't notice your own smell, and you're so used to everyone else's that it barely registers. Smell is just part of the sensory landscape, like the cold or the smoke or the ever-present hunger. Parasites are another issue. Lice, fleas, ticks, various intestinal worms. You've got them all. Everyone does. They're unavoidable when you're living in close quarters with animals and other people, when your clothing never gets washed, when your bedding is made from animal hides that are homes for all sorts of tiny creatures. Lice in your hair and body, lice in your clothing, are constant companions. You can feel them sometimes, itching, crawling, biting. People spend time grooming each other, picking through hair and removing the lice they find, crushing them between fingernails or teeth. It's social, bonding activity, but it's also necessary pest control. You can never get rid of all the lice, but you can keep their numbers manageable. Intestinal parasites are harder to deal with because you can't see them. You know they're there because of the symptoms: stomach pain, diarrhea, weakness, sometimes visible worms in your feces. You get them from contaminated water, from eating undercooked meat, from generally living in an environment where sanitation is non-existent and fecal-oral transmission is easy. Some parasites are relatively benign, causing mild discomfort, but not much else. Others are debilitating, sapping your energy, stealing nutrients from your food, making you weak and vulnerable. There's not much you can do about them. Some herbal remedies might help, bitter plants that make your gut an inhospitable environment for worms, but mostly, you just live with them. Everyone has parasites. It's part of life. Disease is always lurking, ready to strike. Without modern medicine, without antibiotics or vaccines or even a basic understanding of germ theory, infections are deadly serious. A cut that gets infected can kill you. A respiratory infection can turn into pneumonia and kill you. Diarrhea, which seems minor, can dehydrate you to death if it's severe enough. Your immune system is your only defense, and it's been battle-hardened by a lifetime of exposure to pathogens. People who survive childhood have robust immune systems because the weak ones died young. It's brutal, but it's effective. The people who make it to adulthood are survivors in the truest sense of the word. Right now, though, you're not thinking about parasites or disease. You're thinking about getting warm again, about falling back asleep before dawn comes and the day's work begins. You burrow deeper into the furs, tucking your hands under your armpits, curling into a tight ball. The person next to you, now fully awake from your cold air invasion, presses closer, and you do the same. Body heat shared is body heat doubled. You're still shivering, but it's getting better. The warmth is returning, slowly, degree by degree. Your breathing slows, your muscles relax. And despite the cold, the hunger, the parasites, the smell, the general awfulness of everything, you drift back toward sleep. Because that's what you do. You survive. You endure. You sleep when you can, where you can, however you can, and you wake up tomorrow and do it all over again. Dawn is approaching, but you don't know that yet. In the depths of winter, with the sun rising late and setting early, the nights feel endless. Time becomes fluid, unmeasurable. You sleep, you wake, you sleep again, in cycles that have nothing to do with clocks or schedules. Your body responds to temperature and light. But in winter, when both are hostile, it's easy to lose track of how long you've been lying under the furs. Hours? Days? It all blurs together into one long, cold night. The darkness itself is a presence, a weight, something you can almost feel pressing down on you. There's no light pollution in the Ice Age, no distant city glow, no streetlights, no passing headlights. When the sun goes down, the darkness is absolute. The only light comes from the fire. And when that burns low, as it does in the hours before dawn, even that fades to a dim red glow that barely illuminates anything. You can't see your hand in front of your face. You can't see the person next to you, even though they're close enough to touch. You exist in a world of sound and sensation, of breathing and warmth and the occasional crackle of the fire. But vision is useless. This kind of darkness messes with your mind. Humans are visual creatures. We rely on sight more than almost any other sense, and when it's taken away, when we're plunged into complete blackness for hours on end, our brains start to fill in the gaps. You might see shapes that aren't there, shadows moving in the corners of your vision. You might hear sounds that don't exist, voices whispering, footsteps outside. It's not hallucination, not exactly. It's your brain trying to make sense of sensory deprivation, creating patterns where there are none. Most of the time you can ignore it, write it off as tricks of the mind. But sometimes, in the deepest part of the night when you're alone with your thoughts and the fire has burned down to embers, it's hard not to believe that there's something out there in the darkness, something watching, something waiting. Your ancestors dealt with this darkness by creating stories, spirits and demons, creatures that lived in the shadows and emerged at night. These weren't just superstitions. They were explanations, ways of making sense of the fear that darkness brings. If there's something out there, something with intent, something you can name and possibly appease, that's less terrifying than the alternative, that the darkness is empty and indifferent, and you're just a tiny, vulnerable creature trying to survive in a hostile universe. So you tell stories. Around the fire, before sleep, parents tell children about the spirits that protect the family, the ancestors who watch over the living, the dangers that lurk beyond the firelight. These stories are entertainment, but they're also education, teaching survival lessons wrapped in narrative form. Dreams in the Ice Age are taken seriously. They're considered messages, glimpses into other worlds, communications from spirits or ancestors. When you dream, you're not just processing the day's events or working through emotional issues, though you're doing that too. You're traveling. You're visiting places and beings that exist in a realm adjacent to the waking world. Some dreams are warnings of danger. Some are instructions for hunts or rituals. Some are visits from dead relatives, offering comfort or advice. In the morning, people share their dreams, and the group discusses what they might mean. It's a way of communal sense-making, of trying to understand the world and your place in it. The winter solstice, the longest night of the year, is a significant event in your culture. It's the point at which the darkness reaches its maximum extent, and after which the days slowly, incrementally, start to grow longer again. It's a turning point, a moment of hope in the midst of winter's bleakness. Your group doesn't have calendars or written records, but you track the sun's position, the angle of shadows, the position of stars. The elders know when the solstice is coming, and when it arrives, there's a celebration. Not a big, elaborate feast like societies with surplus will have in later eras, but something, an acknowledgement, a ritual, a moment of communal gathering around the fire to mark the fact that you've made it halfway through winter and the days are about to start getting longer. That night, the longest night, you might stay awake longer than usual. You might keep the fire burning brighter, adding extra fuel even though it's wasteful, because light and warmth on the darkest night have symbolic as well as practical value. You might share food, precious stored fat and meat, eating more than you usually would. You might tell stories, sing songs, engage in rituals that your group has performed for generations. The specifics vary depending on where you are and what culture you're part of, but the impulse is universal: to acknowledge the darkness, to celebrate the fact that you're still alive, and to express hope that spring will come again. But that's a special night, and most nights aren't special. Most nights are just long, cold stretches of time that you have to get through. The darkness is a challenge, yes, but it's also an opportunity. In summer, with its long days, you're active from dawn to dusk, hunting, gathering, working constantly. In winter, with its long nights, you're forced to rest. Your body gets the recovery time it desperately needs. Your metabolism slows, not to hibernation levels, but to something more sustainable. You sleep more, rest more, conserve energy. It's not laziness, it's survival strategy. The darkness forces you to slow down, and that might be the only thing that keeps you alive. You think about the sun sometimes, in these dark hours. You miss it. The feeling of warmth on your face, the brightness, the way it transforms the landscape from a hostile frozen wasteland into something almost beautiful. The sun is life. It's warmth and food, and the promise of easier times. In winter, with the sun so low and weak and absent for so many hours, it's easy to understand why your ancestors worshipped it, why they built monuments aligned with sunrise and sunset, why they performed rituals to ensure it would return. Because what if it didn't? What if one winter the sun just kept getting weaker and weaker, until it disappeared entirely. It sounds absurd, but when you're living in a world where you don't understand the mechanics of planetary motion and solar cycles, it's a legitimate fear. The sun leaves. You perform the rituals. The sun comes back. It's hard not to draw a causal connection. The shelter is quiet now. Everyone is asleep, or at least resting quietly. The breathing around you is slow and steady, punctuated by the occasional snore or cough. The fire has burned down again, just a faint glow, and you should probably get up and add more fuel. But you're warm, or at least warm enough. And moving means exposing yourself to the cold air, and you're just so tired. Someone else will tend it. Someone else will wake up and add wood, and make sure the coals don't die. Right now, you're going to lie here, in this cocoon of furs and body heat, and try to sleep a little longer. Dawn will come eventually. It always does. And when it does, you'll face whatever challenges the day brings. But for now, in the darkness, you rest. Something changes. You feel it before you see it. A subtle shift in the quality of the darkness. A slight lessening of the absolute blackness. Dawn is coming. Your body knows it even before your conscious mind registers it. Your metabolism, which has been idling in low-power mode through the night, starts to rev up. Your core temperature rises slightly. Hormones shift, preparing you for activity. You're still exhausted, still cold, still not remotely interested in leaving the warmth of the furs. But your body knows that day is coming, and with day comes work. And with work comes the possibility of food. You open your eyes. The shelter is still dark, but there's a difference now. The embers of the fire cast just enough light that you can make out shapes. The lumps of sleeping bodies around you. The curve of the walls. The stacked supplies near the entrance. Someone is already awake. One of the elders, sitting near the fire, adding small pieces of wood to coax it back to life. They glance over as you stir, nod in acknowledgement, then return their attention to the fire. No words are exchanged. It's too early for conversation, and besides, what is there to say? Good morning feels inadequate for greeting another day of survival in the frozen apocalypse. The fire catches, growing from embers to small flames to a proper fire. And with it comes light and warmth. The shelter brightens. You can see faces now, people starting to wake up, emerging from under the furs with varying degrees of reluctance. Children are still deeply asleep, their small bodies exhausted from yesterday's play and chores. They'll be woken soon, but for now, they're allowed to rest. The adults are rising, stretching stiff muscles, preparing for the day. There's a ritual quality to this morning routine, a practiced efficiency born from doing the same thing every single day of your life. Someone pulls back the entrance flap to check the weather outside, and a shaft of pale pre-dawn light enters the shelter. The cold air rushes in with it, and everyone groans or curses or pulls their furs tighter. The person at the entrance announces what they see. Clear sky, no new snow. Wind from the north. This is good news. Clear means you can travel if needed, can hunt if there's opportunity. New snow would mean staying close to the shelter, focusing on maintenance tasks. Wind from the north means it'll be bitter cold, but at least it's not the wet wind from the west that brings storms. Everyone processes this information, adjusting their mental plans for the day. You need to pee again. Of course you do. It's morning, and your bladder has filled overnight. This time, at least, there's light to see by. Not much, just the gray pre-dawn glow. But it's better than the absolute darkness of midnight. You bundle up in your outer furs, brace yourself, and head outside. The cold is stunning, even though you knew it was coming. The air is so cold, it feels solid, like you're walking into a wall. Your lungs protest when you breathe in, the cold air shocking your airways. Your eyes water immediately, and the tears freeze on your eyelashes, making them stick together. The landscape outside is a monochrome study in whites and grays. Snow covers everything, smooth and unblemished in some places, sculpted into wind-carved drifts in others. The sky is lightening in the east, a pale stripe of color on the horizon that promises sunrise soon. In the distance, beyond the shelter, you can see the dark line of trees, skeletal and bare. Closer, there are tracks in the snow. Animal tracks, probably from the night before. Something passed near the shelter while you were sleeping. You make a mental note to point them out when you go back inside. They might be prey tracks, worth following, or they might be predator tracks, worth avoiding. You take care of business quickly, because lingering outside in this temperature is asking for frostbite. The sun hasn't risen yet, and without its meager warmth, the cold is even worse than usual. You can feel your fingers going numb inside their wrappings, your toes tingling in your foot coverings. You finish, use snow to clean yourself, and hurry back to the shelter. Inside, the fire is blazing now, and people are gathered around it, holding their hands out to the warmth, soaking up as much heat as they can before the day's work begins. Food is distributed. Not much, because supplies are limited and winter is long. A piece of dried meat for each person, about the size of your palm. A chunk of frozen fat, hard as a rock, that you'll need to hold near the fire to soften before you can bite it. Maybe some dried berries, if there are any left, sweet and chewy. A reminder of summer's brief abundance. You eat slowly, chewing thoroughly, making the food last. Your stomach wants more, is demanding more, but there isn't more. Not yet. Maybe later, if the hunt is successful, there will be fresh meat. But for now, this is breakfast. This is what you get. The children wake up, pulled from sleep by the adults, grumpy and resistant. They're wrapped in furs and positioned near the fire, where they eat their smaller portions and gradually become functional. Childhood in the Ice Age isn't like modern childhood. There's no school, no structured playtime. Children work alongside adults from the time they can walk, learning by doing, absorbing the skills they'll need to survive. The youngest ones help gather kindling, sort through supplies, watch younger siblings. Older children assist with hunting, gathering, hide processing, whatever's needed. It's work, but it's also training, and everyone understands that today's child is tomorrow's hunter or gatherer. There's no time for coddling. Life is too hard, survival too precarious. The sun rises. You can't see it from inside the shelter, but you know it's happened because the light changes. The gray pre-dawn gives way to something brighter, warmer in tone if not in temperature. Someone steps outside and confirms, the sun is up, the sky is clear. It's going to be a cold day, but a clear one. Good for hunting, good for traveling. Plans are made, tasks assigned. Some will hunt, following those tracks you saw, hoping for fresh meat. Some will stay at the shelter, tending the fire, processing hides, watching the children. Some will gather firewood, always needed, never enough. The day begins, and you, having survived another night in the frozen ice age, are alive to participate in it. That, right there, is the victory. That's what winning looks like when you're trying to sleep through winter in 18,000 BCE. The day has fully begun now. You've eaten your meager breakfast, warmed yourself by the fire, and now it's time to work. Because survival in the Ice Age isn't just about enduring the cold and finding food. It's about maintaining the technology that makes survival possible. And by technology, we're talking about the tools, clothing, and equipment that stand between you and death. Every piece of it is handmade, painstakingly crafted from materials you've gathered or hunted, and all of it requires constant maintenance, repair, and replacement. Let's start with your clothing, because it's the most sophisticated technology you own. You're wearing multiple layers right now, each one serving a specific purpose. The innermost layer, against your skin, is soft hide, probably from a young animal, scraped and worked until it's supple and comfortable. It's not pleasant exactly, because it still has that characteristic leather smell, and it's never quite soft enough, but it's better than nothing. This layer absorbs sweat, provides a first barrier against the cold, and prevents chafing from the rougher outer layers. Over that, you have another layer made from fur-bearing animals. Rabbit, fox, maybe marten, if your group was lucky during the hunt. These pelts are stitched together using bone needles and sinew thread, creating a patchwork garment that looks primitive, but is actually highly functional. The fur traps air close to your body, creating an insulating layer that dramatically reduces heat loss. Each little hair of fur acts as a miniature air pocket, and air, as your ancestors learned through trial and error, is an excellent insulator. This middle layer is where most of your warmth comes from, and it's carefully maintained. Patches sewn on when holes appear, worn sections replaced when necessary. The outermost layer is your heavy fur cloak, made from reindeer or another large animal with thick winter fur. This is your protection against wind, which is arguably more dangerous than cold alone. Wind strips away your body heat, penetrates through gaps in your clothing, and can cause hypothermia even when the temperature isn't that low. Your cloak is designed to block wind. The hide is thick, the fur is dense, and the whole thing is cut large enough to wrap around your entire body. It has a hood, also fur-lined, that can be pulled up to protect your head and face. Without this outer layer, you wouldn't last an hour outside in winter conditions. All of this clothing is held together by stitching, and that stitching is made possible by one of the most important inventions in human history, the eyed needle. Before needles with eyes, people used bone awls, pointed tools that could punch holes in hide, and then they threaded sinew through those holes. It worked, but it was slow, imprecise, and the resulting seams were loose and weak. The eyed needle, a slender piece of bone carefully carved to a point on one end and pierced with a small hole on the other, revolutionized clothing. Suddenly you could make tight, strong seams. You could create fitted garments that followed the contours of your body, maximizing warmth and allowing movement. These needles are precious. Making one takes hours of careful work. You start with a bone from a small animal, something slender and straight, like the leg bone of a rabbit or fox or bobcat. You carefully shape it, grinding and scraping until it's smooth and tapered to a fine point. The hardest part is drilling the eye, the small hole through which thread will pass. You use a sharp stone point, twisting it back and forth with incredible patience, slowly boring through the bone without breaking it. One slip, too much pressure, and the bone cracks, and you have to start over. When you finally have a finished needle, you guard it carefully. Lose your needle, and you can't repair your clothing. Can't repair your clothing, and you freeze. It's that simple. The thread you sew with is sinew, the tough connective tissue from animal tendons. After a kill, the tendons are carefully removed, usually from the legs and back, and hung to dry. Once dry, they can be split into thin strands, almost like thread, that are incredibly strong and naturally sticky when wet, which helps them cling to the hide as you sew. You keep sinew stored in a small pouch made from a stomach or bladder, protected from moisture and pests. When you need to sew, you take a strand, dampen it in your mouth to make it pliable, thread it through the needle's eye, and get to work. Every stitch is deliberate. Every seam is reinforced. There's no such thing as disposable clothing in the Ice Age. What you make has to last. Your other tools are equally important. Stone tools, primarily, because metal hasn't been discovered yet, and won't be for thousands of years. You have scrapers for processing hides, sharp-edged flakes of stone that can remove fat and tissue from the inside of a fresh skin. You have cutting tools, larger stone flakes with keen edges for butchering animals and cutting meat. You have choppers for breaking bones to get at the marrow inside. You have barons, specialized tools with sharp, chisel-like edges for working bone and antler, carving them into needles, awls, and other implements. Making stone tools is a skill that takes years to master. You need to understand rock types, to know which stones will flake predictably and which will shatter uselessly. You need to understand angles and force, how hard to strike, and where to strike to produce the flake you want. It's almost an art form, this knapping of stone, and the best knappers in your group are respected for their ability to turn a lump of flint or obsidian into a functioning tool. Raw material isn't always available either. Good stone for tools might be found only in certain locations, sometimes miles away, and groups will travel specifically to quarry sites to gather stone or trade with other groups who have access to better materials. Weapons are your most critical tools, spears primarily, because bows and arrows haven't been invented yet. Your spear is a wooden shaft, probably about 6 to 8 feet long, made from a straight sapling that was cut, dried, and carefully shaped. The tip is a stone point, a Clovis point if you're in North America during the right time period, or one of the many other styles of stone points that different cultures developed. This point is hafted onto the shaft using sinew and tree resin, bound tightly and allowed to dry until it's solid. The point has to be perfectly balanced and secured, because if it comes loose during a hunt, you're potentially facing down a mammoth with a stick. Not ideal. Recent research suggests that Ice Age hunters didn't throw these spears at mammoths, at least not usually. The force generated by human arms isn't enough to penetrate a mammoth's thick hide deeply enough to cause fatal wounds. Instead, hunters use the spears as pikes, planting the butt end in the ground and angling the point upward, then provoking the mammoth to charge. When a multi-ton mammoth charges into a planted spear, the force is enormous, enough to drive the point deep into vital organs. It's a terrifying technique, requiring nerves of steel and perfect timing, but it works. The mammoth essentially kills itself on your weapon. Hunting mammoth isn't something you do alone, or even with a small group. It requires coordination, planning, and teamwork on a scale that suggests Ice Age humans were far more sophisticated than we sometimes give them credit for. Some groups dug pits, large traps that mammoths could be driven into. Others used natural features of the landscape, driving herds toward cliffs or ravines. Still others used fire to direct animal movement, creating barriers that forced prey into kill zones. The level of organization required for these hunts, the ability to plan ahead, to communicate complex strategies, to work together toward a shared goal. That's advanced cognition. That's modern human behavior, happening 20,000 years ago in a frozen wasteland. Right now, though, you're not hunting mammoth. Today's task is more mundane, but equally necessary. You're working on a new pair of foot coverings because your current ones are wearing out. The soles are thinning, and soon they'll develop holes that will let in cold and moisture, which is a recipe for frostbite. So you're sitting near the fire with some pieces of hide, your precious needle, and a length of sinew, stitching together boots that might save your toes in the coming weeks. It's tedious work, repetitive, but it's also meditative. Your hands know what to do, following patterns learned in childhood. Each stitch is a small act of survival. Each completed seam is a tiny victory against the cold. And when you're done, you'll have footwear that, while far from comfortable, will keep you alive. In the Ice Age, that's all that matters. The sun has reached its highest point, which in winter isn't very high at all. It hangs low in the southern sky, pale and weak, providing light but very little warmth. The shadows are long, even at midday, stretching across the snow in shades of blue and gray. The temperature has risen slightly from its early morning low, maybe climbing all the way to -10 or -15 Fahrenheit, if you're lucky. It's still dangerously cold, but marginally less so, and that marginal difference is significant when you're living on the edge. The hunting party left hours ago, tracking those animal prints you saw this morning. They won't be back until late afternoon at the earliest, possibly not until after dark if they're successful and have to butcher and transport a kill. Hunting in winter is a gamble. The animals are scarce, scattered across a vast landscape, and tracking them through snow is exhausting work. But when a hunt succeeds, when you bring down a reindeer or bison or, in the rarest cases, a mammoth, the payoff is enormous. Meat for weeks, fat for months, materials for clothing, tools, shelter. Everything you need to survive, delivered in one massive infusion of resources. Those who stayed behind at the shelter are busy with their own tasks. Children are learning to make cordage, twisting plant fibers and sinew into strong rope that can be used for everything from binding tools to creating snares for small game. It's fine motor skill work, requiring patience and dexterity, and the younger children struggle with it, their clumsy fingers producing loose, uneven cord. But they're learning, and someday those skills will be second nature. An elder is teaching them, demonstrating the proper twist, the right tension, correcting mistakes with gentle but firm guidance. One of the women is scraping a hide, preparing it for use. This is brutal, physical labor that looks simple but is actually exhausting. She's working on a reindeer skin from a recent kill, stretched over a wooden frame and held taut. Using a stone scraper, she's removing every bit of fat, membrane, and tissue from the inner surface of the hide. It has to be completely clean, or it will rot, developing a stench and attracting scavengers. Her arms move in a steady rhythm, scraping, 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 the blade shaving off thin strips of tissue that fall at her feet. She's been at it for hours, and she'll be at it for hours more. Tomorrow, if the weather cooperates, she'll treat the hide with a mixture of animal brains and fat, working it into the skin to soften it, make it supple and workable. Then it will be stretched and worked and scraped again until it's transformed from a stiff, raw hide into something that can be sewn into clothing or used for shelter. You've finished your foot coverings and moved on to another task, repairing one of the sleeping furs. It has a tear along one edge, probably from repeated folding and use. And if it's not fixed, it will get bigger. You're sitting close to the fire for light and warmth, needle in hand, carefully stitching the torn edges back together. The work is peaceful in its way. The shelter is warm, relatively speaking. The fire crackles softly. People around you are working quietly, the silence broken only by the sounds of scraping, twisting, the occasional murmured instruction. It's a moment of calm in a life that's rarely calm, and you savor it while you can. The smell in the shelter has intensified as the day has worn on, and more people have been inside, working and generating body heat. It's a thick, organic funk composed of smoke, unwashed humans, curing hides, dried meat, and the general mustiness of a space that's been continuously occupied for months. To an outsider, someone from the modern world, it would be overwhelming, possibly nauseating. To you, it's just the smell of home. You don't notice it anymore, the same way you don't notice the constant background hum of hunger or the dull ache in your muscles from yesterday's labor. These things are simply part of existence, as normal and unremarkable as breathing. Children are playing near the entrance, wrestling and laughing, their energy seemingly inexhaustible despite the cold and the limited food. Play, even in the Ice Age, even when resources are scarce and survival is precarious, is important. It's how children develop the physical skills they'll need as adults, the strength, coordination, and social awareness. The games they play are miniature versions of adult activities. They stalk each other like prey, practice throwing sticks like spears, build tiny shelters from twigs and scraps of hide. It's cute in its way, but it's also serious training for a life where mistakes can be fatal. An elder is telling a story, voice rising and falling in a practiced cadence. It's a teaching story about a hunt that went wrong, about mistakes that were made, and lessons that were learned. The children stop their playing to listen, drawn by the narrative, and the adults pause in their work, also listening, even though they've heard this story before. Stories are how knowledge is preserved in a culture without writing. Everything your people know, everything they've learned over thousands of years of survival, is encoded in stories, songs, and rituals that are passed down from generation to generation. Forget the stories, and you forget how to survive. So you listen and you remember. And when the time comes, you tell the stories to your children, keeping the chain unbroken. The light begins to change. The sun is descending, starting its early afternoon journey toward the horizon. In winter, you get maybe 8 or 9 hours of daylight, and that's on a good day. The rest is darkness. You're always conscious of the sun's position, always tracking its movement, because when it sets, your ability to work effectively drops dramatically. You can do some things by firelight, sewing, and small repairs, but detailed work becomes difficult. Hunting is impossible. Gathering is dangerous. Travel is risky. The night belongs to rest and waiting, not productivity. Someone announces that they're going outside to gather more firewood. It's a task that has to be done daily, sometimes multiple times a day, because the fire is never allowed to go out and it consumes wood at a steady rate. A couple others volunteer to help, and they bundle up in their outer furs, preparing for the cold. You watch them go, see them disappear through the entrance flap into the bright, cold afternoon. You don't envy them. Your task, sitting inside in the relative warmth and stitching fur, is far preferable. But you'll have your turn outside soon enough. Everyone contributes. Everyone takes their turn at the unpleasant jobs. That's how group survival works. The shelter settles back into its working rhythm. Hands busy, minds half-focused, the afternoon wearing on. This is life in the Ice Age. Not constant drama and life-or-death struggles, though those happen. Mostly it's this: tedious, repetitive work, day after day, maintaining the tools and clothing and shelter that keep you alive. It's not exciting. It's not glamorous. It's just what you do, because the alternative is freezing or starving, and nobody wants that. So you sew and scrape and twist cordage and tell stories and wait for the hunters to return and hope that when they do, they're carrying meat. Late afternoon, with the sun already beginning to set, there's a shout from outside. The hunters are back. Everyone inside stops what they're doing, heads turning toward the entrance. Another shout, this one closer, and then the entrance flap is pulled aside, and people start coming in. Their faces tell the story before any words are spoken. The hunt was successful. There's excitement in their movements, energy despite what must be hours of exhausting work. Someone says, "Reindeer," and the shelter erupts in murmured conversation, relief and happiness mixing together. The hunters are frozen, ice crusted on their furs and in their hair and beards. They move stiffly, muscles locked up from hours in the cold, and they head immediately for the fire, hands outstretched toward its warmth. Their fingers are white, bloodless, and they have to be careful warming them because frostbitten tissue is fragile, and can be damaged further by rapid temperature change. They warm slowly, grimacing as circulation returns and feeling comes back in waves of painful tingling. But they're smiling despite the pain, because they brought home food. The kill is outside, too heavy to drag into the shelter. The hunters managed to bring down a large buck reindeer, and they field-dressed it where it fell, removing the organs and cutting it into sections that could be transported. Now, the pieces are piled in the snow just outside the shelter entrance, already beginning to freeze in the sub-zero temperature. Tomorrow, or maybe later tonight, if people have the energy, the meat will be properly butchered, cut into smaller portions, some to be eaten fresh, and some to be frozen for storage. The hide will be processed, added to the collection of materials for future clothing and repairs. The antlers and bones will be saved for tool making. Nothing will be wasted. For tonight, though, there will be fresh meat. Real, fresh meat. Not dried and leathery, but tender and rich. The mood in the shelter lifts dramatically. People are smiling, talking louder, moving with more energy. Food security, even temporary food security, changes everything. It's not just the promise of full bellies tonight, though that's certainly part of it. It's the psychological boost, the reassurance that the group can still hunt successfully, that the land can still provide, that you're going to make it through another day. The women who stayed behind start preparing the evening meal. They bring in a large section of meat, the haunch, heavy and awkward, and position it near the fire. Using stone knives, they cut off pieces, trimming away the parts that were damaged or contaminated during the kill and butchering. The good meat is cut into chunks and spitted on green wood skewers, then positioned over the fire to cook. Fat drips off the cooking meat and falls into the coals with a hiss and a burst of flame. The smell is incredible, rich and savory, and everyone's mouth is watering. It's been days since the last fresh meat, and you'd forgotten how good it smells. While the meat cooks, someone brings in a piece of liver, still partially frozen, and cuts it into thin slices that are distributed raw. Liver is prized because it's packed with nutrients you can't get from muscle meat alone. Vitamin A, iron, all sorts of things your body desperately needs. You take your piece, maybe the size of your palm, and eat it without hesitation. It's cold, slightly slimy, with a strong metallic taste. It's not pleasant exactly, but it's nutritious, and you've eaten raw liver enough times that it doesn't bother you. Some of the children make faces, reluctant to eat theirs, and are encouraged firmly by the adults. Eat your liver. It's good for you. It keeps you healthy. Same arguments parents have been having with children for thousands of years. The cooked meat comes off the fire, and portions are distributed. The hunters get the largest shares because they expended the most energy and need to recover. The children get next priority because they're growing and need the nutrition. The elders get their share, appropriate to their status. Everyone else gets what's left. And today, there's enough that everyone gets a decent portion. You receive your piece, maybe as big as both your hands together, and it's still hot from the fire, steam rising off it. The outside is charred, almost burned, and the inside is barely cooked, red and juicy. You tear into it with your teeth, pulling off chunks and chewing, the fat and juice running down your chin. It's delicious. It's one of the best things you've ever tasted. and you've eaten reindeer hundreds of times in your life. The meal is eaten in relative silence, everyone focused on their food, savoring every bite. Eating fresh meat after days of dried rations is almost euphoric. Your stomach fills, actually fills, distending with food, and the constant gnawing hunger that's been your companion for weeks recedes. Not gone, never fully gone, but quieter. Your body is getting the calories and nutrients it needs, and you can feel the energy returning, warmth spreading through your limbs as the food is digested and converted into fuel. After the meat is gone, people start working on the bones, cracking them open to get at the marrow inside. Bone marrow is one of the most calorie-dense foods available to you, rich in fat and nutrients, and it's considered a delicacy. You take a leg bone, already split by someone with a stone chopper, and use a stick to dig out the soft, creamy marrow. It's warm, almost body temperature, with a rich, buttery taste that's completely unlike muscle meat. You eat every bit you can reach, scraping the inside of the bone until it's clean. Around you, everyone is doing the same. Fingers and faces covered in grease. Small sounds of satisfaction filling the shelter. This is abundance by Ice Age standards. This is wealth. Full bellies, warm shelter, fire, family. What more could you want? Someone starts singing, a low, rhythmic chant, and others join in. It's a song of thanks, of celebration, acknowledging the successful hunt and the animal that gave its life to feed the group. There's a spiritual aspect to hunting in your culture, a recognition that you're taking life and that this has meaning. The animals aren't just resources. They're beings with their own existence and agency, and they deserve respect and gratitude. The song serves this purpose, honoring the reindeer, asking for continued good fortune in hunts to come. It's also a bonding ritual, the group singing together, voices harmonizing, creating a sense of unity and shared experience. The fire burns bright, fed with extra wood in celebration. The shelter is warm, warmer than it's been in days, and full of people who are, for this moment, content. Outside, the sun has set, and darkness has returned. But inside, there's light and warmth and the lingering smell of cooked meat. You lean back against the wall, your belly full, your body relaxing for the first time all day. This is good. This is what you survive for. These moments of peace and plenty in the midst of winter's harshness. You close your eyes, listening to the singing, feeling the warmth of the fire on your face, and you think, maybe, that you'll make it, that your group will survive this winter and the next, and the ones after that, that humans, despite everything stacked against them, will endure. The meal is finished, the bones are cleaned, and people are settling in for the evening. The children, bellies full for the first time in days, are getting drowsy, their earlier energy fading as the warmth and food work their magic. One by one they curl up near the fire, wrapped in smaller furs, and within minutes they're asleep, their faces peaceful and relaxed. Childhood in the Ice Age is brutal in many ways, but children are also remarkably resilient, capable of finding joy and rest even in harsh conditions. The adults let them sleep, knowing that tomorrow they'll be up early and full of energy again, ready for whatever tasks need doing. The adults arrange themselves around the fire for what has become an evening ritual. This is the time for storytelling, for teaching, for reinforcing the bonds that hold the group together. In a world without books, without schools, without any form of permanent record-keeping, oral tradition is everything. Knowledge is stored in human memory and transmitted through repeated telling. Stories aren't just entertainment, though they serve that function too. They're education, history, religion, and social bonding all wrapped together. An elder begins tonight's story, and everyone settles in to listen, their faces flickering orange in the firelight. The story is about ancestors, people who lived generations ago, but whose deeds are still remembered. It's about a particularly harsh winter, worse even than this one, when food ran out and the group was forced to travel in dangerous conditions to find new hunting grounds. There were deaths along the way. Children, elders, even strong hunters succumbed to the cold and hunger. But those who survived did so because they stayed together, because they shared what little food they had, because they refused to abandon the weak even when it would have been easier to do so. The story emphasizes cooperation, sacrifice, community over individual survival. These are the values that keep a group intact, that make collective survival possible in an environment that would kill a lone human in days. You've heard this story before, many times, but you listen intently anyway. Each telling is slightly different, details emphasized or de-emphasized depending on who's telling it and what lessons they want to highlight. Stories are living things in oral cultures, shaped and reshaped by each generation while maintaining their essential core. The children who are still awake listen with wide eyes, absorbing the narrative, learning what it means to be part of this group, this family. They're learning survival skills, yes, but they're also learning ethics, morality, what behaviors are valued and what behaviors are condemned. When the story ends, there's a moment of silence, everyone sitting with their own thoughts. Then, someone else starts to speak, sharing something that happened during today's hunt. How they tracked the reindeer for hours, reading the signs in the snow, interpreting the animal's behavior. How they coordinated the kill, working together to drive the animal toward the hunters with the spears. How one of the younger hunters made a mistake that could have cost them the kill, but the older hunters adjusted and compensated, and everyone learned something in the process. This is another form of teaching, sharing practical knowledge, reinforcing the techniques and strategies that make hunting successful. Someone mentioned seeing tracks they didn't recognize earlier in the day, possibly a predator, possibly dangerous. This leads to a discussion about whether the group should post a watch tonight, someone to stay awake and tend the fire and listen for threats. It's decided that yes, a watch is wise, and volunteers are organized to take shifts through the night. These decisions are made collectively, through discussion and consensus rather than top-down command. Leadership in Ice Age societies is fluid, situational. The best hunter leads the hunt. The most experienced hide worker teaches hide processing. The eldest tell the stories. Everyone contributes according to their skills and experience. There's a deep sense of interdependence in the group, a recognition that everyone needs everyone else. You can't survive alone in the Ice Age. You need hunters to bring food, gatherers to find plants and materials, craftspeople to make tools and clothing, storytellers to preserve knowledge, healers to treat injuries and illness, elders to provide wisdom, children to ensure the group's future. Every person has value. Every role is essential. This creates social bonds that are incredibly strong. Relationships built not just on kinship, but on mutual dependence and shared hardship. You've lived with these people your entire life. You've celebrated with them during times of plenty, and suffered with them during times of scarcity. They're not just family. They're your survival. The conversation drifts, becoming more casual, people sharing small observations and jokes, teasing each other gently. Despite everything, despite the cold and the hunger and the constant threat of death, there's laughter. Humor is a survival tool, too, a way of coping with stress, of maintaining morale when everything is terrible. Someone makes a joke about how one of the hunters slipped and fell in the snow during the chase, and everyone laughs, including the hunter in question. It's not mean-spirited, it's affectionate, a way of acknowledging shared experience and relieving tension. Life in the Ice Age is hard, but it's not without moments of joy, of connection, of simple human warmth. As the evening wears on, people start to prepare for sleep. The fire is banked, fuel added to keep it burning low through the night. Sleeping furs are arranged, people claiming their spots, children carried to the warmest positions. The person taking first watch settles in near the entrance with extra furs, prepared for a long, cold vigil. Everyone else begins the process of settling down, removing outer layers of clothing that are too bulky to sleep in comfortably, arranging furs for maximum warmth. The shelter gradually quiets, the conversations dying down to murmurs, and then to silence. Outside, the wind howls, but inside, surrounded by family and firelight, you feel something that might almost be called security. You lie down in your spot, pulling the furs up and curling into your familiar sleep position. Your partner is beside you, already drowsy, and you press close, sharing warmth. Your stomach is full for once, and your body is deeply tired from the day's work. Sleep comes easily tonight, pulling you down into darkness within minutes. As you drift off, your last thought is gratitude. Not the abstract, philosophical gratitude of modern people with their comfortable lives, but a visceral, bone-deep thankfulness that you survived another day, that there was food to eat, that you have shelter and fire, and people who care whether you live or die. In the Ice Age, that's abundance. That's everything you could hope for. Somewhere in the middle of the night, deep in the coldest hours before dawn, you wake. Not because you need to, not because there's any danger, but because your body has cycled through its first sleep period and entered one of those natural, wakeful intervals that humans have experienced for thousands of years. The shelter is dark, the fire burned down to barely glowing embers. The person on watch has added just enough fuel to keep the coals alive, conserving wood for the long night ahead. You can hear them moving slightly, a shadow darker than the surrounding darkness, alert and watchful. The cold has intensified. You can feel it pressing in from all sides, seeping through the walls, rising from the frozen ground despite the layers of insulation beneath you. Your nose is cold where it sticks out from under the furs. Your breath comes out in clouds that you can't see but can feel. moisture condensing in the frigid air. You burrow deeper, pulling the furs over your head, creating a small pocket of warmer air around your face. It smells strongly of unwashed human and old fur, but it's warmer, and that's all that matters. Around you, people are sleeping in various states and positions. Some are snoring, that distinctive rattling sound of air moving through congested airways. Respiratory issues are common in the Ice Age, with everyone breathing smoke all day and living in close quarters where illnesses spread easily. Coughs, wheezes, chronic congestion, these are just normal background conditions of life. Someone nearby is grinding their teeth, a harsh, scraping sound that speaks to stress and tension held in the jaw. Another person, probably one of the children, is making small noises, maybe dreaming, maybe just shifting in sleep. The sounds of the night are a constant presence. Wind outside, howling and moaning as it moves across the landscape, finding every gap and crack in the shelter's walls and whistling through. The occasional crack and pop from the fire as a piece of wood settles or a pocket of moisture boils off. The creaking of the shelter structure, bones and wood and hide flexing slightly in the cold, expanding and contracting with temperature changes. And beneath it all, the breathing, the collective rhythm of a group of humans sleeping together, a sound so constant that you normally don't even notice it. Your mind wanders in that strange, fluid way it does during these nighttime wakings. You think about tomorrow, what needs to be done. More butchering of the reindeer carcass, cutting and storing meat, scraping the hide, breaking bones for marrow and materials, gathering more firewood, always more firewood, checking and repairing tools, clothing, equipment, the endless maintenance tasks that keep survival possible. You think about spring, still months away, but inevitable. The days getting longer, the temperature rising, the snow melting, the animals returning. The transformation of the landscape from white death to green abundance. It feels impossibly far away right now, but you've lived through enough winters to know it will come. You think about the people around you, your family in every sense that matters. The partner beside you, breathing softly, face peaceful in sleep. You've been together for years, have survived countless hardships together, have created children together. There's a bond there that goes beyond romance or physical attraction, though those exist too. It's a partnership forged in the fires of survival, tested daily by the demands of Ice Age existence. You depend on each other in the most literal sense. If one of you dies, the other's chances of survival drop dramatically. You think about the children, sleeping in their pile of furs near the fire. Some are yours, some belong to others in the group, but you care for all of them because they're the group's future. Every child that survives to adulthood is a victory. Another hunter or gatherer or craftsperson who will strengthen the community. The odds aren't as terrible as people once thought. Recent research suggests that infant mortality in prehistoric populations wasn't as high as earlier estimates claimed. Many babies survived, cared for by mothers and extended family who were far more capable than modern people often assume. Still, childhood is dangerous, and you've seen children die from illness, accident, predation. Each loss leaves a hole in the community that takes time to heal. You think about the ancestors, the people who came before, who survived winters even harsher than this one, who developed the technologies and strategies that you're using right now. The knowledge of how to make fire, how to sew fitted clothing, how to hunt large animals cooperatively, how to process and store food. None of this is instinctive. It's all learned, passed down through generations, refined and improved over thousands of years. You're part of a chain of survival that stretches back into the mists of time and forward into a future you'll never see. That thought is oddly comforting, the sense of being part of something larger than yourself, larger than any individual. The cold is getting to you, despite the furs. Your feet are going numb, your fingers tingling. You shift position, tucking yourself more tightly against your partner, drawing their warmth. They mumble something in their sleep but don't wake, just automatically pressing closer. This is intimacy in the Ice Age, not grand gestures or romantic declarations, but the simple, animal comfort of shared body heat in the darkness. You close your eyes, willing yourself back to sleep, knowing that dawn is still hours away and you need all the rest you can get. Your breathing slows, deepens. The sounds of the night fade into background noise, and gradually, degree by degree, you drift back down into sleep, into dreams of spring and warmth and abundance, knowing that when you wake, it will be to face another cold day in the endless Ice Age winter. Time passes. Days become weeks, become months. The winter continues, cold and dark and relentless, but your group survives. There are challenges, of course. A period of bad weather where hunting is impossible and you're forced to survive on stored meat that's starting to run low. An illness that sweeps through the shelter, leaving everyone weak and coughing for days. A close call with a predator, wolves that circle the shelter one night, testing defenses before finally moving on to find easier prey. But you survive. The group survives. Because that's what humans do. The technology that your ancestors developed over thousands of years, the clothing and tools and shelter-building techniques, proves its worth again and again. The eyed needles that allow you to create fitted, multi-layered garments that trap heat effectively. The sophisticated understanding of animal hides and how to cure them, soften them, turn them into materials that are both warm and durable. The cooperative hunting strategies that allow you to bring down animals much larger than any individual could tackle alone. The fire-making and fire maintenance skills that keep you warm and protected through the long nights. All of it together forms a system of survival that's remarkably effective, allowing humans to inhabit some of the harshest environments on Earth. The social bonds within the group prove equally crucial. The willingness to share food even when supplies are low, ensuring that children and elders eat before the strongest hunters. The cooperative childcare, with everyone in the group contributing to raising and protecting the next generation. The collective decision-making, where experience and wisdom guide actions rather than simple dominance or strength. The storytelling and teaching that preserve knowledge and transmit it to those who need it. The humor and affection that maintain morale through the darkest times. These are the soft technologies, the social innovations that are just as important as the physical tools. One morning, weeks after that successful reindeer hunt, you wake to find the quality of the light has changed. It's subtle, but you notice immediately. The sun is rising a little earlier, setting a little later. The days are getting longer. You've passed the winter solstice weeks ago, and now the incremental return of light is becoming perceptible. Spring is still far off, months away, but the trend has reversed. The darkness is retreating. The cold will remain for a while longer, but the worst is behind you. You feel something lift in your chest, a lightness that's hard to name. Hope, maybe, or just the knowledge that you've made it through another winter, that you've survived when survival was never guaranteed. The group's mood shifts, too. There's more energy, more laughter, more optimism. People start talking about spring activities, planning hunts for when the migration herds return, discussing which areas to visit for early greens when the snow melts. Children play more vigorously, sensing the adults' improved spirits and responding to it. Even the elders, who've been conserving their energy through the darkest months, become more active, more talkative. Winter isn't over, but the promise of its end is enough to change everything. You think about your modern descendants, the people who will live 20,000 years from now, in a world transformed beyond recognition. They'll have conquered so many of the challenges that make your life difficult. They'll have permanent shelters with heating systems that maintain comfortable temperatures regardless of outside conditions. They'll have clothing made from sophisticated materials, designed in factories, available in endless variety. They'll have abundant food, more food than they can eat, available year-round from stores and restaurants. They'll have medicine that can cure infections and treat injuries that would be fatal in your time. They'll live in a world of unprecedented comfort and safety. But they'll also have lost something. That visceral connection to survival. The immediate relationship with the natural world. The unbreakable bonds that form when people depend on each other absolutely. They'll live longer, more comfortable lives, but perhaps they'll struggle to find meaning and purpose in a world where survival is easy and challenges are often artificial. They'll have technology that can connect them to thousands of people, but they might feel more isolated than you do, sleeping under furs with your family pressed close in the darkness. They'll have access to unlimited entertainment and information, but they might find it harder to sleep, their brains overstimulated, their ancient rhythms disrupted by artificial light and constant stimulation. You can't know any of this, of course. You can't imagine the future that's coming, the cities and machines and civilizations that will rise and fall. Your world is this: cold and darkness, hunger and exhaustion, the constant presence of danger, the small comforts of fire and family, and a full belly on the rare occasions when you have one. Your concerns are immediate and concrete. Will there be enough food to last until spring? Will everyone survive the winter? Will the hunters be successful tomorrow? These are the questions that occupy your mind, because they're literally matters of life and death. But you have something that many of your descendants will spend their lives searching for: certainty of purpose. Every action you take has clear, immediate meaning. You sew clothing because you'll freeze without it. You gather firewood because you'll die without the fire. You hunt because you'll starve without meat. You maintain relationships because you can't survive alone. There's no existential angst about whether your work matters or whether your life has meaning. Of course it matters. Of course it has meaning. You're alive, which means you're winning. The sun rises on another day, pale and cold, but undeniably present. You step outside the shelter to greet it, the frozen air shocking your lungs, the snow crunching under your feet. The landscape stretches out before you, white and clean and beautiful in its harshness. The sky is clear, that deep blue color that only appears on the coldest days. In the distance, smoke rises from where another group has their shelter, neighbors in survival, too far to visit easily but close enough for occasional trade and social connection. You're not alone out here. Humans are scattered across the landscape, groups and families and communities, all doing what you're doing, surviving through cooperation and technology and sheer stubborn refusal to quit. You take a deep breath of the frozen air, feel it burn in your chest, and let it out in a great cloud of vapor. You're cold, you're tired, you're hungry, because you're always hungry. Your body aches, your hands are chapped and cracked, you smell like smoke and sweat and animal fat, and you'll probably have parasites for the rest of your life. But you're alive. You survived another night in the Ice Age. And tonight, when darkness falls and the temperature plummets and you crawl back under those furs with your family around you, you'll do it all again. You'll sleep and wake and survive and sleep again. Because that's what humans do. That's what we've always done. That's how we made it through the frozen hell of the Ice Age to become the civilization-building, technology-creating, world-conquering species that will eventually inherit the Earth. One cold, uncomfortable, utterly unglamorous night at a time. So, dear exhausted listener, as you lie there in your temperature-controlled bedroom, under your manufactured blankets, with your memory foam mattress and your pillow top whatever, and your central heating humming away in the background, take a moment to appreciate what you have. You're not going to freeze to death tonight. You're not going to be eaten by a cave lion. You're not going to wake up with frostbite or intestinal parasites or lice crawling through your hair. You don't have to pee in a snowbank in -30-degree weather. You don't have to spend your days scraping animal hides or stitching clothes with bone needles or hunting mammoths with sharpened sticks. Your ancestors, those tough, resilient, incredibly determined people who survived the Ice Age, they made it so you could have this warmth, this comfort, this ease. They developed the technologies, refined the strategies, passed down the knowledge that eventually led to agriculture and civilization and industry and all the rest. They survived so you could complain about your mattress not being quite comfortable enough. Take a second to be grateful for that, for the chain of survival that connects you to them, for the genetic lottery that placed you in this time instead of theirs. And now, comfortable listener, warm and safe and well-fed, let yourself drift off to sleep. Let the story of ancient suffering lull you into unconsciousness. Let the knowledge that survival used to be so much harder help you appreciate how relatively easy you have it. Close your eyes. Sink into that mattress. Pull those blankets up. And sleep. Deeply and peacefully. In a way your Ice Age ancestors could only dream of. You've earned it, just by virtue of being born in the right era. Good night, exhausted listener, and until next time.